Alright, what is going on, guys? So, for the past couple weeks, well, probably not a couple weeks, probably more like a week and a half, um, I have been testing slash looking into AcreetionOS. AcretionOS is we're going to get into, honestly, I'm going to probably keep this video kind of short. This is my first time kind of like doing a first look at a distro. Um, and as you can see, I'm not in the distro currently, and we're going to get to that. Um, the why, I should say. So I've done my research on this project. I have talked to the devs. I've been sitting in their Discord and kind of just lurking in the conversations and looking at what's been talked about, what's been going on, and I've watched a couple videos on it, and I have installed it, and to verify that the installer works and everything. And so, without further ado, let's get into the nitty gritty. So we got their website here, and we've got Accretion OS. Accretion OS is an approachable and user-friendly distribution based on the powerful Arch Linux core. So yes, another Arch-based distro. I know. Our mission is to bridge the gap between the power and flexibility of Arch and the simplicity that everyday computer users expect. We aim to make the Arch ecosystem accessible to a wider audience. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much further. I'm going to hit some more highlight points from their website, but first of all, this website, this here is clearly drafted by a language learning model. That is like one of the first things I noticed looking at their website is everything kind of comes across as if it's written by ChatGPT. And one way that you can see this in action, and if you don't believe me, go ask ChatGPT to draft you, well, anything. ChatGPT likes to do this stuff with the hyphens here, where it's just random hyphens for no reason. That is like a telltale sign um, of AI. Well, particularly ChatGPT. Um, Now, hey, they want to use AI to draft their website. That's their business. Um, I don't think it's a particularly great look, especially with all the AI sentiment just in general in the tech space right now. I feel like people are going to read through this website, and some people are going to feel like it's written by AI, and then they're just going to be like, nope. But anyway, like Billy Mays, but wait, there's more. So, we are open, independent, and bootstrapped. Everything related to AcreetionOS, including this website, is fully open source. We believe in the power of the free and open source software to empower users and protect digital freedom. We are a small, passionate team of developers, and our independence is not just a feature, it's the foundation of our project. A lot more of this. How we work, we believe in real, genuine human interaction. That's why we've chosen Discord as our primary community platform. So they do have a Discord, as I've already said. Um, Discord allows for real-time conversations, no shit Sherlock, which helps us provide better support and fosters a more personal and less toxic environment. We want to build a community where users can connect with each other and with the development team directly. This approach helps us to stay connected, etc., etc. Then they go on to talk about how you can contribute. Now, mind you, I'm sure that 90% of people, at least 95% of people who watch this video, well, maybe not. People who watch this video are going to be looking for videos on it most likely. And, obviously, like some of my subscribers will watch it. But um, this is a very unheard of project. It's very new. It's only been around for, as far as I can tell, I don't know the exact formation time, but as far as I can tell, it's only been around for about 6 months. So it's very much early stage, still trying to get a user base, a solid established user base type thing. And it's like under the hood, AcreetionOS is more than just a themed version of Arch Linux. We made several key decisions and customizations. Boot process, simple and reliable. Now this just talks about how they use the bootloaders they use for their live ISO, and then how they use Grub for the main distro itself, like the main system. It talks about how they use ext4 for stability, which okay, and then audio, the power of Pipewire. I mean, this doesn't. I hate to be like leveling criticisms at their website straight out the gate, but it's like this doesn't tell anybody anything. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you guys use ext4, great. That's like a default Linux file system. What this doesn't tell you is that they only support ext4, which means for root. Meaning that if you want to come in and have ButterFS or XFS on your root file system, you cannot. There is no option to select it in the installer. You are just stuck with ext4, which I think is not a positive move either. And I'll be pulling up this conversation here in just a moment, but I actually did have a conversation with one of the lead developers about it. I was like, why wouldn't you guys make it, it's Calamaris. You can easily set it up so that there's options. And she was just like, because we're targeting new users and new users don't care. And if you're more advanced enough to want another file system, then you'd probably be on another project or et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, okay, well, me personally, I don't think it's a good idea to alienate advanced users. I mean, if you want a project that is going to build a community, right? Like take PeakOS for example. PeakOS is very user friendly. It is very much geared towards like making things accessible to new users, but it does this in such a way that it is both friendly to new users, but it does not. It doesn't do it at the expense of more advanced users. Like PeakOS is a distro where you can come in and not know what the hell you're doing, and then like as you grow in Linux, you can still continue to do great things with PeakOS. Whereas with this project, and as this is the picture I'm going to paint here soon, or continue painting, I should say. With this project, it almost seems as if it's geared to have new users come and then move on to another project. Which, if that's what they want to do, fine. Like that's it's your project. If that's all the goal is to provide a you know hassle-free experience for brand new users, and then if they want to do extra stuff, they can move on elsewhere. Then hey, that is what it is. But then I kind of find it hard. Anyway, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around the decision making process there. I guess I don't know. It seems just weird to me. Like you could easily like make ext4 the default and then have the option to switch to something else right there in Calamaris. Obviously, new users who aren't going to care and aren't going to give a shit aren't going to change it anyway. So I don't know. Especially because ButterFS and XFS are becoming kind of like ButterFS, especially, is becoming like a very standard file system. ButterFS is what I use on my system across the board. I know a lot of people love XFS too. Um, I like ButterFS for compression and snapshots and stuff, but XFS is faster. Anyway, and then they got the power of Pipewire, which I mean, okay, um, pretty much any distro worth its salt right now is using Pipewire. That's pretty much the standard Linux audio stack at this point. I mean, if you're going into a project and it's using Pulse Audio as its default, you're probably on something very old. Um, so I don't get why that's a talking point either, because it's like that's there's nothing special about that. Like every project is running Pipewire that's currently in operation, let alone uh, projects that just started. You know. So then they have their AcreetionOS USB flasher, which is their recommended way of flashing the ISO. I did test this, and it was not working for me. Let me let's see if it'll actually work now. I did talk to them about this as well, which they were not able to duplicate the problem. Yeah, I'm getting the same thing here. I don't know if it's just some weird quirk with PeakOS going on, or but I get this failed to load ISO list, um, and basically it's useless. Of course, you can just use a more standard flasher, Popsicle, Fedora Media Writer, Balana Etcher, whatever they recommend. Balana Etcher, I believe. Um, and this kind of leads me into my next thing, since we're getting to this part. Um, Cinnamon Edition. So I do not see, nor was I able to find any other, like it says main, which kind of seems to imply that there is another version out there, but there's no options in the installer. You just get dropped into Linux, or not, no, you get dropped into Cinnamon, and Cinnamon is what they ship, which is a weird, is an interesting choice. I want to say it's a weird choice. Cinnamon is kind of similar to Windows. I feel like Plasma would be more similar. Um, my biggest problems with Cinnamon is that Cinnamon is not very feature complete. Their Wayland support is very experimental. Even things like supporting basic things like VRR and HDR, like they don't have HDR support, and to my knowledge, and VRR support is highly wonky at the moment. Um, Obviously, like, so it's primarily X11. It's it's just a weird choice, and that kind of like leads me into my greater overall stance with this project and the conclusions I've come to. The reason why I'm not doing it from, I'm not doing this video from inside this system, and I've already removed it from my computer, is because I've kind of like just going into Cinnamon and like experiencing, its shortcomings. I've kind of like made up my, like, I didn't even do any game testing on it, to be honest. Like, I played one game, and it was Dying Light the Beast on it, and I didn't like do any benchmarks or anything. Um, it definitely didn't feel as smooth as what I'm used to. It didn't play badly, but um, probably because the VRR sucks and I don't even think it was properly working. Um, and so I did a little bit of testing, make sure everything works, and everything did work. Let me put it to you this way. Let's get it straight out the gate. This project does everything it sets out to do. And that's what makes it this, like, my review or my first impressions here. I don't even call it a review because it's not in depth enough to be a review. But my first impression, that's what makes my first impressions here so conflicted, is because the project does everything that it sets out to do very well. Um, like, it's easy to install, it absolutely, is a very user-friendly experience getting it set up, getting it installed. Um, Pretty pain-free as far as all that stuff goes. They've got options for, some additional packages in the Calamaris installer, including, some gaming packages. Very limited in the way of gaming packages, though. It's only like Steam and Lutris and something else, like I think Heroic maybe. I don't remember. I should have taken screenshots of it, but it wasn't. Definitely wasn't the full suite of gaming features you would get in a project like Pika or Cashy or anything. Of course, you can always install that stuff manually, but I don't think new users are going to know to do that. Um, but my biggest, despite the fact that they do everything well, the biggest problem is that they don't do anything well enough in a new enough way, in a big enough way that I can recommend it to other people, because it's like, so the way that they do packaging, for instance, they hold back packages for 2 weeks, and they basically release packages in 2 week intervals, and in the meantime they test new packages, make sure everything's stable. It's kind of like a Manjaro style approach where they basically take in Arch packages and then they test them and make sure nothing breaks, and then they push them out to their users. I've been in their Discord for the past couple weeks and I've seen a couple things break. So obviously, it's a newer project. Things are going to be a little bit wonky, but and it is a smaller development team. Like, as far as I can tell, they have 2 developers. I could be wrong about that. They might have more, but as far as I can tell, they have 2 that I know of. Um, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. PeakOS is a dynamic duo, after all. Um, they're nice people. I've talked to them extensively. Well, not extensively, but I've had some conversations with both of them. Nice people. Seem willing to help and all that stuff, which is good. But the problem is we're gonna boil it down here. The problem is that I can't recommend it over anything else. This is a brand new project that does everything that it sets out to do, and I cannot recommend it over anything else because, you know, to me it kind of feels like Linux Mint Arch Edition with a side of Manjaro style packaging. It's basically like somebody said, "Damn, I really wish I could do Linux Mint and Arch Linux," and it's like, well, if you want like a Cinnamon, a real stable, older, I don't want to say outdated, but like an older, more stable experience where you don't have to worry about things ever changing really. Like if you really want like that stable cinnamon experience, well, go to Linux Mint because Linux Mint has been around a lot longer. It has a much larger community. It's extremely user friendly. They've got guides out the wazoo. Whereas this distro, being a newer distro, is kind of an unknown element, right? Like you don't know what's going to happen with this project. It's been around for 6 months. These developers could decide in a couple months' time that they're not getting the kind of user base that they want and pack it up and call it quits. And now you got a distro hop. So I can't tell people, hey, this is a user-friendly distro. You should hop into this because it doesn't bring anything new to the table. Like I hate to say it, I do because I can tell they've put a lot of work into it, but it doesn't. It does. There's nothing new here. It's Linux. It's essentially Linux Mint and an Arch package with some Manjaro stabilization esque effects, and honestly questionable choices that kind of like box them into certain things that I feel are going to alienate certain groups of users. And then you come over here and you get on their website and they're like, AI assistants, we're a small team, and while we're passionate about building an OS, our collective brain power has its limits. For questions that go beyond our expertise, we recommend consulting one of these digital sages. So right here on their website, they are literally basically telling people who come here, like looking, where's their, so at least they got their Discord server above it. Um, but it kind of seems like they're telling people like, hey, if you run into problems, we might not be able to help, so you should go use Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, I don't know. I'm very tired. um, and that's kind of like another like what kind of moment because it's like that is like such a bad thing to tell, especially new users. Because your whole thing is you're a new user distro, right? So you're telling new users, hey, go use an LLM to figure out your Linux problems. That is a recipe for disaster. Because if a new user goes into ChatGPT and just starts firing away questions, they're not going to know their ass from a hole in the ground as far as like what ChatGPT is telling them to do. And if they follow everything that ChatGPT says to the letter, and they don't know how to discern things and question things and like further refine ChatGPT's responses and give it more information, they're going to wind up nuking their systems. Because ChatGPT thinks they're running something that they're not, or has bad information or whatever. These LLM tools, like language learning models, are great. They're very useful little tools, especially in the hands of somebody who, kind of knows about the source material. But when you're taking a new user who doesn't know anything about Linux and they're running into some kind of problem and they don't know how to troubleshoot, they don't know how to, they don't know enough about the command line or anything, you're going to go ask them to have ChatGPT save the day, and ChatGPT might save the day, that time or the next time or whatever. But it's very much just as likely that it's going to come up with the wrong response. They're going to put in some command. It's going to make their problem worse, and then you're looking at a multiplication of problems. And then you got Linux users running around, more Linux users running around who are just, borking up their systems. And it's such a bad thing to be telling people. Like, please do not encourage new users to use language learning models to solve their problems. Please do not do that. And do not, I'm not saying, and I'm not even saying that that's exactly what they're telling people to do, but if I was a new user and I was reading this, that's what I would think. reading this here and like like you're basically advertising, hey, we might not be able to solve your problem, so ask ChatGPT. Well, it's not good. Okay, it's not a good look. Then on top of that, you've got your website, which kind of looks like it was drafted by AI. So it very much it's a obviously it's a pro AI team here. Um, and then that kind of comes off as vibe coding and that sort of thing, which just it's going to be a very divisive look. And some people ain't going to care, but some people are going to really not like that. Me personally, I don't think it swings one way or another on like how good the project is, but I do think that it definitely will be divisive for someone looking seriously looking at this distro for a Switch. Um, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I'm keeping this short and sweet because there's really not much else to say. Um, I cannot recommend this project to new users. I think I would be highly interested, in coming back and revisiting this after it's had a bit more time to cook and, they kind of figure out their identity a bit more. I hope that the devs don't take this too much to heart in a negative way. Like, I know I've kind of been on the critical side here with this one, but, I can only call it how I see it. And, um, you know, I do look forward to seeing if the project improves and if you guys come up with some new stuff or some big changes, by all means, my Discord. Uh, Feel free to hit me up, and I will be more than happy to come take a fresh look at the project. Let's go into Discord real quick before I cut this off. So here's the so I said, why no option for your ButterFS in the installer? I know you guys default to ext4, but would be cool to see other options available. And they basically talk about how they exclude it on purpose. AcreetionOS is meant to be a new user starting point. They are likely coming from macOS and or Windows. If they can't have other file systems and have got to that level of expertise, would they not have graduated to Arch by that point? So, I mean, as you can see right here, she is plainly saying that this project, hey, if you want a different file system, wouldn't you already be on Arch? Like, is that the goal of the project? To be a stepping stone? I mean, if it is, then, hey, it doesn't, I don't know. I have a tough time, like, so you're going to have a community full of users that don't know what the fuck they're doing, and that's going to be that. I mean, it's going to be hell. I'm just going to put it out there. Like, and I'm like, catering to new users is an admirable goal, but in my humble opinion, it shouldn't come completely at the expense of more advanced users. I get what you're saying, and I'm not trying to be standoffish about it. You said you wanted honest feedback. I mean, if the goal is a steady stream of new users who move on to their to other things, that's fine. But it would seem to me that in terms of project longevity and building a wider community, you wouldn't want to alienate more advanced users in this process. Just my opinion. We haven't alienated anyone, though. You did. You alienated me in that first 13 seconds of looking at the project. That's what you fail to understand. Like, I'm telling you about this because I personally don't like it, and I know that other people would dislike it, and so now I'm here like, hey, it would be cool, like something to think about, right? Anything you can do on Arch, you can do on AcreetionOS with enough work. I mean, converting root to a different file system is a gigantic pain in the ass and risky, considering it's, root. So, I mean, yeah, you could theoretically do it with the right tools. I wouldn't recommend it. I would almost rather reinstall at that point. Man, I've been using Arch Linux since I was 9 years old. I am all about tinkering. Okay, well, that's cool, but that's not the point. You know, and that was very cool. When I initially got there. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and then there was another thing I wanted to show you guys. Um, they talked about uh, they talked about something. Oh no, I can't find it. Well, I guess I'll leave that for another. No sense to beat the dead horse. Let's just say that I saw a comment from one of them talking about how AI broke some stuff in the system. I don't remember the particulars of it, but it kind of led me to believe that AI is being used in some maintenance capacity, which tracks with everything else. Now I can't find the message though, so take that with a grain of salt if you will. But yeah, so I can't recommend it. That's the that's the long and the short of it. I cannot currently recommend it to any new users. If you do go with the project as a new user, you'll be fine. Obviously, like I said, the project itself is a good project. It's just you could honestly have a better experience elsewhere with a more established community and more freedom of choice. And that's kind of like another thing is like this is Arch based, but it takes all the spirit of Arch and just throws it out the window. There's no choice. There's this argument of, well, if you put enough work in, you could do it here. But it's like, okay, well, yeah, I know that I could go into AcreetionOS and add the CachyOS repos and install KDE Plasma and do all these things and make it do the things I want it to do. But that's not the point. If I'm going to do all that, I'm just going to install Arch, right? Like Nat said, wouldn't they have just moved on to Arch by now? Well, yeah, at that point, if that's what I need to do to make the system function the way I want it to, then that is what I would do. And that's what new users are going to do too. They're gonna grow, and then they're going to say bye bye. And it is what it is. I like I said, in my opinion, there are better options out there for new users where you're not having this unknown factor of uh, a newer project, and you know and honestly, like the the AI leanings that I'm getting out of this project, and like the way the devs are like very pro AI about everything, and how they're encouraging new users to go use LLMs for to figure out their problems, and the way the website's kind of drafted by AI, looks like it's drafted by AI. Honestly, their logo kind of looks like it was made by AI too. If I'm going to be all the way 100 with you, let's take a look at that. Actually, if you don't believe me here, I don't think we got a good look at it yet. Come on, bro. Tell me that's not AI generated. I mean, yeah, it gives kind of like vibe coder. I'm sorry, it does. And I'm not saying that that's at all the case with the project either. Like, I'm not saying that they're using AI to do all their work or anything of that sort. But that is the impression. Um, the good for the good and the bad. So in between that, the choices to limit people to ext4 and cinnamon and all this shit. Um, if you want a super new user friendly Cinnamon experience, Linux Mint's probably the better option. Just being honest. If you're looking something for gaming, that's user friendly and good for gaming, PeakOS, Nobara. Well, Nobara gives me problems, so I guess I can't really recommend Nobara either. But PeakOS, CachyOS, you know, that's the thing. Like, if you want a project to be successful in this day, in this day and age when there's all these distros and all this stuff, you really need to stand out in a good way, I think, to like take off and be successful. We've got a million Arch distros out here that are aimed at making Arch easier. Um, so it's a very saturated distro market in that regard. So you have to like stand out in a good way. And to be honest with you, the only things as good as this distro does some things well, the only things that really stand out about it are the things that are bad, are the things that are questionable, like all the AI stuff and yada yada. So like when the project itself can be very good, but when it's being compared in a sea of other distros that also do things very well, the only things that start to really stand out are the things that make you go, huh? And the things that are just bad. So I think they need to really zero in on what they want to do and, the identity that they want to have, and try to bring some stuff to the table that changes things in a really big way. You know, like like PeakOS, for instance. just as a quick comparison, PeakOS is kind of like I've compared it to PeakOS multiple times because PeakOS has a lot of similarities, believe it or not. Um, not even just in the sense of not in the sense of like AI stuff and Cinnamon and all that, but in the fact that like AcreetionOS, PeakOS is a quote unquote gaming distro slash user friendly distro in a sea of gaming distros and user friendly gaming distros. So it has to stand out, right? Well, how does PeakOS stand out versus, say other projects? Well, for one thing, it's Debian SID based. There's performance focused no other performance focused Debian distro out there. There's not another Debian distro out there doing what PeakOS is doing. PeakOS is one of a kind in that regard. And then they have all their utilities and stuff that they've custom built, and Falcon D that they created and stuff like that. That all like brings meaningful contributions that nobody else has come up with. You know what I mean? It's going to take more than a USB flasher that doesn't even work on all systems apparently to make your project stand out. And if your project doesn't stand out for a good reason, then people are going to find negative ones for it to stand out for. And that's kind of like where I'm at with it is, you know, sure, the distro will do what you want it to do in the regard of what they set out to do with it. But that's not really good enough in a market as saturated as this one is. So that's my big takeaway. I cannot recommend this project, not in its current condition. Hopefully they make some constructive changes and you know they can turn things around. I mean it's never too late for them to make big changes and make a comeback and well not make a comeback but like get off on the right foot I should say. Um, so yeah, that is my first impressions. I will take a look at this distro again here. Bless me. Or excuse me. I will take a look at this project here again. Sometime in the next 6 months or something like that. I'll look back into it and see where it's at, and if anything changes, I will make another video about it. I'm always looking for new projects to look into and stuff. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more like first impression stuff, or if you want to see me get more in depth with it. I wanted to go more in depth with it and like do some gameplay videos and stuff like that, but to be honest with you, I didn't really see a point in it. It's like I would never run this, so I'm not gonna like force myself to run something that I would just never remotely be interested in running versus like my current system. So I was just like, well, I've gathered enough information to make a first impressions video, and that's what I'm gonna do, and that's what I did. So, anyways, let me know what you guys think. Have a good night.